The sky was flat and gray when I opened my eyes. It was that kind of Ohio winter morning that makes everything feel heavy. I stayed in bed for a moment. Let the silence stretch around me. I was thinking about the final week before graduation. 5 years of night classes, weekend study sessions, working full-time through all of it. Soon I'd be walking across the stage to get my MBA. I was already planning in my head where my family would sit, imagining them clapping for me, maybe even standing up when they called my name. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. I reached for it, expected a text from Mom asking where to park, or what time to arrive. Instead, the family group chat stared back at me. Mom's message was polite, almost cheerful. "Sweetheart, we can't make it to your graduation. Jessica's housewarming is the only day everyone can gather. We'll celebrate you another time." I stared at the words. Let them sink in like cold water down my spine. "Well," I muttered into the empty room. "That's a gut punch before coffee." I knew favoritism existed in my family. It was as constant as the seasons. But this was a new level. The bitterness in my chest seemed to seep into the coffee I poured. Each sip tasted like the reminder that my place in the family had never been secure. By mid-morning, I couldn't sit with it any longer. I called Mom. "This is my graduation, Mom. I've worked for this for years." My voice was measured, sweet enough to avoid sounding rude, but firm enough to carry weight. She didn't hesitate. "Sweetheart, houses aren't bought every day. You'll have more graduations in your life." I nearly laughed, but it came out as a sharp exhale. "More graduations, Mom? I'm 33 years old. This isn't a hobby. It's a milestone." Her silence lasted just long enough for the sting to deepen. "We'll celebrate you later," she said. "Like a prize at a carnival. Later. Another time." The way people say it when they mean never. I would never forget this feeling. I ended the call, wandered into the kitchen, stared at the family calendar on my fridge. The date of my graduation was circled in red marker. A bright little lie. That afternoon the doorbell rang. A small package sat on the mat. Return address in my parents' handwriting. I carried it inside, my pulse quickening for reasons I couldn't quite name. Inside was a mug, white ceramic. The gold "Congrats grad" lettering was already peeling in one corner. Tucked inside it was a card, the generic kind you buy in bulk. "We're proud of you in our own way. Love, Mom and Dad." In our own way. The phrase landed like a stone in my stomach. It wasn't a gift. It was a placeholder for guilt. Something to say, "We thought of you," without the inconvenience of actually showing up. I set the mug on the counter, its hollow clink echoing the emptiness I was already bracing for. "It's the kind of thing you grab in the checkout line when you've forgotten someone's birthday," I said to no one, shaking my head. By early evening, I dialed my father's number. Maybe, just maybe, he'd have a different take. "Hey Dad," I began. "I just talked to Mom. You're really not coming?" His tone was gentle, careful, like he was stepping through a minefield. "Your mother's made the plans. It's important for the family to be together for Jessica." And yet, I said evenly, "I'm apparently not part of that together." There was a pause. Then the low sound of his sigh. He didn't argue. He didn't defend me. He just stayed quiet. And I realized that his silence wasn't neutrality. It was agreement by not saying anything. "You're making a choice you can't take back," I told him. It was the first warning I'd ever given either of my parents. Still nothing. That nothing told me more than any words could. When the call ended, I sat for a moment, staring at my phone, feeling the first crack form in a wall I'd been leaning on my whole life. By nightfall, the house was dim, except for the soft lamp glow in my living room. My cap and gown hung on the door, waiting for a day that now felt uncertain in every way except the date. I poured a glass of wine, let the cool liquid ease down my throat, and sat back in my chair. I imagined the auditorium, the row labeled "Family of Rachel Martinez," each seat empty, glaring in the camera shots as other graduates' families filled theirs with applause and flowers. If they wanted me out of the family's spotlight, I'd find my own light, and I'd make sure it was bright enough to blind them. I swirled the wine in my glass, the deep red catching the lamplight, and made a silent promise to myself. Their absence would not define my achievement. I didn't know it yet, but their absence would be the least painful part of what was coming. 2 days later, I pulled into my parents' driveway. The same cracked concrete I'd known since high school, still covered with the salt stains of winter. I had told Mom I needed an old photo album for a work project. Half true, half excuse to set foot in the house without making the visit about my graduation. When I stepped inside, the familiar scent of lemon polish and brewed coffee wrapped around me. I kicked the snow from my boots, wandered toward the living room. That's when I saw it. The gallery wall, as Mom liked to call it, stretched across the space above the sofa. Frame after frame. Jessica in her cap and gown from high school. Jessica on her wedding day. Jessica with her daughter at the county fair. Her husband standing proudly beside her in most of them. My own face appeared exactly once. A dated photo from my senior year. Tucked low on a side table. Partly hidden behind a leaning pile of magazines. If walls could talk, these ones would tell me I was just a guest here. I stood there, hands buried in my coat pockets, taking it in. No need to touch anything. The arrangement already said more than words could. I snapped a mental picture, sealing it with the quiet realization that this imbalance had been here far longer than I'd wanted to admit. Rachel, Mom's voice floated from the kitchen. "Come in here, honey." She was at the counter arranging little cheese cubes on a serving tray. "I've been planning the menu for Jessica's housewarming. Do you think spinach dip or artichoke is more festive?" I was actually hoping we could talk about my ceremony. "Oh, we'll celebrate you another time, dear," she said without looking up. "Right now it's about Jessica. You know how much this means to her." There it was again. That casual shift from me to her. As natural to Mom as breathing. My lips pressed together. It's always been about her, I thought. Though I didn't say it aloud. Not yet. I left with the album under my arm. The weight of it nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest. The drive home felt longer than usual. Each stoplight a chance to replay her tone. Her words. The way they slid so easily past any consideration of me. That night, curled on my couch with a blanket, I let my thumb scroll through social media. There she was. Jessica in a perfectly framed shot in front of her new house. Champagne glass raised. The front porch draped in a welcome home banner. The caption read, "Success isn't about degrees. It's about building a life you love from the ground up." My stomach twisted. She didn't tag me, but she might as well have put my name in flashing lights. The comments were full of praise. "Inspiring. You're such a role model. True success story." I took a screenshot, not just for memory's sake, but because I had the sense I'd need it later. I resisted the urge to type something back. Sarcasm would be too easy, too cheap. No, silence would do more. Silence leaves people wondering what you're thinking. Instead, I opened a private folder on my laptop, the one I'd started after Mom's group text, and dropped the screenshot in. I added a note with the date and time, cataloging it like evidence. If they think I'm walking into this blind, they're wrong, I told myself. Before bed, I wrote in my journal, "Every wall tells a story. One day I'll make sure mine is heard." It was past midnight when I finally set my phone on the nightstand. The glow from Jessica's post still seemed to hover in my mind. I pictured her smiling that careful, camera-ready smile, and imagined the look she'd have if her version of success was challenged. In front of the very people she wanted to impress. Family loyalty is a two-way street, and they had just run a red light. They didn't know it yet, but I had already started paving my own road. Sleep didn't come easily after seeing Jessica's post. The glow from her caption lingered in my mind long after I set my phone down. I turned over, stared at the ceiling, told myself to let it go. But some things don't fade on command. They circle, waiting for the quiet, then creep back in. Near midnight, I gave up on the idea of rest. I pushed the blanket back, walked across the room, opened the desk drawer I hadn't touched in years. A sealed envelope sat in the back, yellowed at the edges. My handwriting, slanted and neat, spelled out my name across the front. I broke the seal, slid out a single photograph. It was me standing in a cap and gown, shaking the dean's hand. My smile was tight, eyes searching beyond the camera. Some ghosts don't stay in the attic. The moment came back sharp. The noise of clapping, the smell of fresh flowers from the bouquets others carried, the echo of names read aloud. I had been scanning the crowd for my family, certain they'd appear any second. They never did. The memory unfolded whether I wanted it to or not. It was my college graduation. Years before this MBA. The plan had been clear. Everyone would come. We talked about it for months. But that morning my phone rang. Mom's voice was rushed. "Honey, we're helping Jessica move into her new apartment. The lease starts today and she really needs us. We'll make it up to you." I remember gripping the edge of my dresser. "You're telling me this now? She can't move without us. You'll understand someday." I didn't argue. Not because I agreed, but because I knew it wouldn't matter. Later I walked across that stage alone. My row stood. We moved forward. Names called one by one. My hand shook as I reached for the diploma folder. The dean smiling as though nothing was wrong. I whispered to myself, repeating the words like a shield. But the shield didn't change the empty seats in the family section. Or the strangers clapping politely because that's what you do when you don't know someone. That day had set the pattern for every milestone since. I set the photograph on my desk, staring at it as the present crept back in. The weight in my chest was the same now as it had been then. Different ceremony. Same absence. It wasn't coincidence. I flipped open the leather-bound folder that held my growing evidence. Printouts of messages. Screenshots. Notes with dates and times. On a fresh page I wrote, 2018 graduation overshadowed by Jessica's move. Patterns reveal themselves when you stop making excuses for people. As I closed the folder, my elbow knocked a stack of old documents to the floor. Papers fanned across the carpet. I crouched to gather them. One file caught my eye. Bank statements from my first years working after college. I sat back on my heels, flipping through. There they were. Regular transfers to my parents' account. At the time they told me the mortgage was behind. I had agreed without hesitation, sending money each month to help keep the house. A thought flickered. I pulled my laptop closer, opened the county property search, keyed in their address. The mortgage had been nearly paid off before my transfers began. I leaned back, letting that settle. Then another search. Jessica's first home purchase date. The down payment amount matched almost to the dollar. The sum of what I'd sent them over those 2 years. It wasn't just emotional sidelining. I had bankrolled her start. I placed the papers in a neat stack, sliding them into the evidence folder. My hands trembled. Not with sadness, but with clarity. They've been writing checks with my name on them, but cashing them for hers. I sat at the desk for a long time. The photo from my college graduation beside the stack of bank statements. 2 pieces of a puzzle I hadn't wanted to see, but now couldn't ignore. The next move was going to change the game entirely. The morning light spilled across my kitchen table, pooling over a spread of bank statements I'd pulled from a box in the hall closet. I'd lined them up in chronological order, my coffee cooling untouched beside me. Every page carried the same phrase in the memo line. Family support. 4 years, I believed those transfers kept my parents from losing their home. Now I knew better. It's one thing to get played. It's another to bankroll the show. I marked each payment with a red pen, totaling them in the margin. The number stared back like a bruise, large enough to be a down payment on a decent house. And according to county records, it had been. Not for me, not for my future, but for Jessica. The folder in front of me, labeled in black marker as housewarming truth, was no longer just a record. It was the foundation of a strategy. This wasn't a misunderstanding or misplaced loyalty. It was theft wrapped in a bow of family obligation. The phone buzzed against the tabletop. A message from Maya. Need to show you something. Don't freak out. Attached were 3 screenshots. The first showed the header of a group chat titled, Family Planning. I didn't recognize the list of names at first, until I realized it was my family's private thread. Maya's text followed. Jessica must have invited me by mistake. She meant to add her friend Lisa, I guess. I tapped the second image. Mom's message sat plainly in the middle of the feed. Let's all make sure we're there for Jessica. No need to split our attention for the graduation thing. The third screenshot sealed it. Jessica had replied, exactly. If she asks, say you're busy or be vague. I read them twice, feeling the air in the room grow heavier. This wasn't passive neglect. It was a coordinated decision. I typed back to Maya. Thank you. Don't delete these. I'll need them. Once saved into the folder, the screenshot sat alongside the bank statements. Two halves of the same betrayal. Money and presents. Both denied to me. Both given freely to her. I stared at the list of transactions again, my jaw tightening. Then I picked up the phone and dialed Mom. She answered on the second ring, cheerful as ever. "Hi, honey. I saw the messages," I said, my tone steady. "You didn't just forget my graduation. You planned to avoid it." Silence. Then, "It's not like that, honey. We just wanted to make sure Jessica had her special day. And mine doesn't matter?" Another pause. "You're overreacting." "No," I said, heat sharpening my voice. "I'm finally reacting." She inhaled like she might say more. But I ended the call. The line between us, already frayed, had hardened into something brittle and cold. By mid-afternoon I was making calls. Not to family, but to the people who'd been there for me without condition. I confirmed my guest list for the ceremony. Coworkers who'd seen me juggle deadlines and night classes. My mentor who'd pushed me to apply for the MBA program in the first place. I reserved 2 front-row seats for them. If my family wanted to erase me from their picture, I'd make sure someone else was holding the camera. That evening, I walked through the graduation checklist. Gown steamed, cap fitted, shoes polished. And on the desk beside the invitation to Jessica's housewarming sat the sealed envelope, holding every screenshot, statement and record I'd collected. Late at night, I slipped the envelope into the bag I'd carried to the ceremony. My fingers lingered on the zipper. If the moment came, I would be ready to end the story they'd been telling. They thought this was just a housewarming. I was preparing for a reckoning. 3 days before graduation, I was making coffee when my phone rang. The caller ID read, "Uncle Thomas." And for a split second I felt the tiniest lift in my chest. He had been my last anchor. The one relative I truly believed would be in that front row for me. His voice was hesitant. "Morning, Rachel. I wanted to talk to you before you hear it from someone else." My stomach tightened. "Go ahead." He cleared his throat. "I'm not going to be at your graduation. Your mom and Jessica really want everyone at the housewarming. It's just easier this way." "Easier for who?" "Certainly not for me." That, I said slowly, is the nail in the coffin for any illusions I had left. "I don't want you to take it the wrong way," he rushed to add. "It's not about you. It's entirely about me," I cut in. "But thanks for confirming what I needed to know." There was a pause, like he might try to patch it over. But I ended the call. The weight of his words landed heavier than I expected, because he'd been the one I'd been holding out hope for. By afternoon I had more proof. Maya texted, "You should see this," followed by a screenshot. It was from a cousin, summarizing a family meeting at my parents' house. They had gone over money matters and final logistics for Jessica's big day. My name wasn't in the notes. Not once. Not even a token, "Should we invite Rachel?" It's one thing to be left off a guest list. It's another to be erased from the minutes. I added the screenshot to my housewarming truth folder. The manila envelope was so thick now it barely closed. An hour later I messaged Kevin. "Meet me at Brew Bean. 30 minutes. The cafe was half full when I arrived. I spotted him in a booth, hands wrapped around a mug. He smiled faintly as I slid into the seat across from him. "I think we both know why we're here," I began. He shifted uncomfortably. "Rachel, I hate all this tension." "You know exactly what this is," I said. "You know they're cutting me out on purpose." He sighed. "I don't want to choose sides." By not choosing, I told him. "You already have." His eyes dropped to his coffee. That silence told me more than any speech could. I stood, pulling out my wallet to pay for my tea. If he wouldn't invest in showing up for me, he wouldn't even get to buy me a drink. I left before he could answer. Back at my apartment, the light was fading. I opened my laptop, drafted invitations for a post-graduation dinner. My dinner. The guest list was short. People who had shown up for me consistently. No explanations. No excuses. The venue was a small, elegant Italian place downtown. I booked a private dining room, prepaid the deposit. In my journal I wrote, "My circle may be smaller, but it's solid." I was done allowing disrespect. As night fell, I spread my evidence folder across the dining table. The dinner confirmation. My graduation schedule. The pieces of my plan were all there. each one a step toward reclaiming my narrative. They're playing their game at the housewarming, I murmured to myself. I'm preparing mine for when the spotlight swings my way. If they wanted a story without me in it, they should have picked a different ending. Because I was about to write my own. The alarm sounded before sunrise. Though I had been awake for some time, graduation day should have begun with anticipation. But the first sensation was a heaviness pressing into my chest. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, telling myself I'd scroll through a few messages before starting the morning. At the top of my social media feed was a fresh album from Jessica. Home Sweet Home. Today's going to be perfect. Every photo was a carefully staged scene. My parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, all standing in front of her new house, grinning like they were at a campaign rally. Every single one of them wore identical Welcome Home Jessica t-shirts, in a bright shade of green that seemed chosen just to sear itself into my vision. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a billboard with my name scratched out. I sat on the edge of my bed, scrolling through each picture. There was Dad holding a paper cup of coffee, looking comfortable on the porch steps. Mom was mid-laugh in another, one arm wrapped around Jessica's shoulder. The timestamps were salt in the wound, posted just hours before my ceremony. I locked the phone, exhaled slowly, set it down. They'd know from the silence that I'd seen it. I wasn't giving them the satisfaction of a reaction. By mid-morning, I was at the kitchen counter making tea, when Maya's name lit up my phone. Listen to this, her text read, followed by a voice memo. I pressed play. The background noise was unmistakable. Clinking glasses, the low hum of a backyard crowd, and then my mother's voice, clear and deliberate. Rachel's book smart, sure, but she never learned how to put family first. Played it again, just to be sure I'd heard every word. They didn't just leave me out. They rewrote my story to justify it. I sent Maya a quick thank you, slipped the recording into my housewarming truth folder. I didn't let the anger boil over. I let it settle into something sharper, more useful. If they wanted to talk behind my back, I'd give them a front row seat to what I really thought. By noon, I turned my focus to preparation. My navy dress hung pressed and ready, the heels polished to a soft shine. I applied my makeup slowly, with the same precision I used when defending a report at work. Instead of sending an angry message, I took a photo, cap and gown draped over my arm, the morning light catching just enough to make the colors stand out. My caption was short. Some milestones you reach alone, but they're no less worth celebrating. An hour later, my dining table looked like a war room. On one side sat my evidence folder. On the other, my purse, phone, and the program for the ceremony. I reviewed my plan again. Attend the ceremony, celebrate with my real supporters, and keep my options open if an opportunity to confront them arose. I called Maya to confirm she and my mentor would be in the front row. Her voice was warm, steady. We'll be there early, and you're going to look like you own that stage. After hanging up, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. My eyes were calm, my jaw set. If they were going to remember this day, let it be for the look on my face, not the absence of theirs. I zipped my evidence folder into the side pocket of my bag, the motion deliberate, almost ceremonial. When it was time to leave, I locked the apartment, headed toward the elevator. Halfway down the hall, my phone buzzed again. A new group post. It was a live video countdown to the start of the housewarming. They can count down all they want, I murmured to myself as the elevator doors slid open. I'm counting down to something else entirely. And when that clock hit 0, they wouldn't be the only ones making an announcement. Maya parked a block from the venue, so I could walk in without weaving through a crowd of classmates and their families. The early afternoon sun bounced off the glass doors of the auditorium, almost too bright for how I felt inside. My mentor Stephen met us at the entrance, his hand warm on my shoulder. Inside, the air smelled faintly of fresh polish and flowers. I let my eyes scan for the family of Rachel Martinez row. 6 seats, perfectly aligned, name placards untouched. Not a jacket thrown over a chair, not a purse marking a spot. Just a neat little island of absence in a sea of bouquets and waving arms. The silence of those seats was louder than any cheer. We found our places, Maya and Stephen on either side of me, the way they'd promised. I took my spot among the graduates, feeling the weight of their presence, and the echo of the ones who chose not to be here. When the ceremony began, the national anthem swelled. Rows of caps tilted toward the flag. My eyes betrayed me, flicking again to that empty row. Still untouched. Still waiting like a stage prop no one intended to use. They made sure their absence would be noticed. A camera crew swept over the crowd. The live feed projected onto 2 massive screens. My row's emptiness appeared in sharp relief, magnified for everyone to see. I straightened in my seat, jaw firm. If anyone was going to be remembered from that row, it would be me. Not the no-shows. The dean's welcome speech bled into a list of achievements. Applause rolled like waves as names were called, each graduate walking into a pocket of personal celebration. When my row stood, I felt the moment stretch. Rachel Martinez, Master of Business Administration with honors. I walked to the stage, each step measured. The dean's handshake was firm. My favorite professor leaning in with a genuine, "Congratulations, you've earned this." And then the MC's voice boomed through the mic. "Where's your cheering section?" They missed the memo. A ripple of laughter moved through the room. Not cruel, but sharp enough to sting. I kept my smile, tilting the mic just enough to say, "Guess they're cheering from a different address today." More laughter. This time softer. Inside, I tucked the moment away like a document in my evidence folder. Proof that their absence wasn't just personal. It was public. Back in my seat, the applause for me faded into applause for the next name. A few classmates leaned over with murmured sympathy, hands squeezing my arm. I thanked them but offered nothing more. When the final name was called, graduation caps flew like a flock of startled birds. Mine stayed put. I wasn't done yet. Outside, the steps were a mess of hugs, cameras, and shouted names. Maya and Steven flanked me again, their cameras catching smiles I reserved only for them. My phone buzzed. A notification. Jessica's housewarming livestream was already rolling. I tapped it open, and there they were. My entire family laughing in the backyard. The matching shirts. A bright unified banner against the manicured lawn. They wanted me invisible. I decided right then I'd make myself impossible to ignore. And I knew exactly where my next stop was going to be. I drove straight from the graduation ceremony, the applause still ringing faintly in my ears, to Jessica's neighborhood. The road there felt shorter than I remembered, though my hands gripped the steering wheel with a focus that made the world outside blur. I parked a block away, out of view, giving myself the advantage of approaching on my own terms. The air was warmer than it had been all week, carrying the faint scent of grilled meat and something sugary. As I walked, the sound of laughter spilled over the fences. Sharp bursts punctuated by the clink of glasses. Music played low, upbeat, almost theatrical in its timing. At the side gate, I paused to straighten my graduation gown, letting the deep navy fabric fall evenly over my shoulders. The diploma case was tucked under my arm, angled just so it would be the first thing people noticed when they looked my way. I stepped through the gate. Clusters of relatives stood under rented tents strung with white lights, holding drinks, chatting in little circles. Matching Welcome Home Jessica shirts were everywhere, a visual chorus of solidarity. I recognized neighbors and a few distant cousins, people who hadn't so much as sent me a message today, laughing like it was the most natural thing in the world. Near the bar, a large flat-screen TV looped a professionally edited video montage. Jessica standing in front of her new home, walking through rooms, hugging guests at the closing table. Halfway through, a clip played. Jessica holding a microphone, beaming at the crowd. Our family always stands together, except when people choose not to be part of it. A few heads turned in my direction, before quickly darting away. My face stayed neutral, my spine straight. If they wanted to narrate my absence, I'd narrate my presence. I made my way slowly toward the dessert table, scanning faces. Some people offered awkward half-smiles. Others avoided eye contact altogether. It didn't matter. I wasn't here to hide in the corners. Then I saw her. Jessica spotted me from across the yard, her expression unreadable for a beat. Before she started toward me, champagne flute in hand, the smile she wore wasn't polite. It was the smile of someone who believed the game was already won. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said lightly. though her eyes flicked immediately to my gown and the diploma in my arm. I figured if I couldn't get my family to my graduation, I replied, I'd bring the graduation to my family. Her smile didn't falter. Well, I'm glad you could join. We've been celebrating all day. Clearly, I let the word hang. Just long enough for her to notice. Around us, the chatter dimmed a little. My mother stood a few feet away, deep in conversation, but angled just enough to keep me in her peripheral vision. A few cousins nudged each other, their whispers carrying farther than they intended. I positioned myself beside the dessert table, where the vantage point was perfect, visible to everyone, but with my back to the fence so no one could edge me out. I slipped my phone from my pocket, tapped the camera on, holding it casually against my side. Fragments of conversation floated into the recording. She just showed up in her cap and gown. Bold move. If they were going to write me out of the script, I was ready to crash the premiere. I moved slowly along the table, taking a small plate, sampling a bite of cake. Every motion deliberate. Jessica kept glancing my way, and even from here, I could tell her smile was starting to tighten. As I reached for a fork, a voice somewhere behind me muttered, Well, she's not going to cause a scene here, right? I set the fork down, slipped my phone back into my bag, and let the corner of my mouth lift in my own version of a victory smile. They thought I came here to watch. No, I came here to direct. And the next line in the script was going to flip the whole plot. I stayed by the dessert table longer than I needed to, letting the sweet smell of vanilla and coffee mingle, while I listened to the conversations circling around me. Words like family unity and always being there for each other floated over the clinking of glasses, each one a barb in its own way. My gaze drifted past the rows of cupcakes to the far end of the yard, where a tripod and a high-definition camera sat angled toward the main table. The live stream wasn't just running. It was broadcasting this whole event to Jessica's followers online. I adjusted my gown, the heavy fabric brushing against my ankles, tightened my grip on my diploma. My pulse slowed as I walked toward the center of the yard, the pathway cutting clean through the clusters of guests. Jessica sat at the main table beside Mom and Dad, chatting with a pair of neighbors. The mic rested on the table in front of her, silver and waiting. She finished her thank you speech to polite applause. A few claps were genuine. Most were just noise filling the space. She reached for her champagne, but before she could step away, I closed the distance, extended my hand. The smile she wore flickered for a fraction of a second before she placed the mic in my palm. She didn't want to refuse. Not here. Not in front of a backyard full of people and a live feed. Since we're celebrating family milestones today, I began, my voice steady. Let me share mine. A ripple passed through the crowd. Heads turned. Cameras on phones tilted upward. Even the live stream camera pivoted slightly, centering on me. I graduated today, I said, letting each word stand on its own. A master's degree. 5 years of night classes. Weekends spent studying. Working full-time in between. And not a single member of my family showed up. The murmuring started. Small but building. I let it grow for a beat before adding. Not because they couldn't. Because they chose not to. The noise died instantly. Even the children seemed to sense the weight of the moment. I glanced at Jessica. And here's the part they won't put in the video reel. They used my own savings to buy this house we're standing in. Gasps broke out like cracks in ice. A man near the bar shifted uncomfortably. Someone whispered, "Is that true?" Loud enough for others to hear. I didn't look away from Jessica as I lifted the evidence folder in my hand, not opening it yet, just letting the sight of it speak. The camera caught the gesture. I saw it reflected on the flat screen inside the house, the feed streaming in real time. That was when Mom stood, her chair scraping the patio. "Rachel," she said, voice pitched to Carrie, "this isn't the time or place. You've made your choices. And from now on, family matters don't concern you." Her words were sharp, but her hands trembled against the edge of the table. "You made sure of that a long time ago," I replied. "I'm just making it official." The live stream caught every syllable. Comments began to appear in the corner of the screen. Questions. Shock. A few congratulations from strangers. Inside, the flat screen was filling with them. each one a little window into how far this moment was traveling. I set the mic down deliberately, letting it thud softly against the table. My diploma was visible, the embossed seal catching the light as I turned. Walking toward the gate, I felt the energy shift behind me. Voices rose, some defensive, some questioning. It didn't matter. I'd said what I came to say, and the echo of it would outlast this party. My phone buzzed in my bag as I reached the sidewalk. Notifications from people I didn't know poured in. Thanks for speaking up. Admiration for telling the truth. Offers of solidarity from complete strangers who'd seen the feed. They wanted me out. Fine. But I wasn't leaving quietly. And before the night was over, I'd make sure they knew just how loud I could be. I left the mic sitting on the table outside, slipped through the side door into the house, bypassing the largest clusters of guests. The cooler air inside carried the faint scent of furniture polish and something floral, probably the same arrangements Jessica had posted about. In the living room, a smaller group of relatives huddled together, their voices low but charged. They broke off mid-sentence when I stepped in. You could cut the tension with a butter knife. I crossed the rug, set my diploma case down on the coffee table, unzipped my bag. The thick envelope slid into my hands, heavier now that the moment had arrived. They wanted proof. I brought a library. Aunt Lauren's eyes narrowed. What's that? You'll see. My voice was calm, deliberate. I straightened. Let the room settle into silence before I began. I called over the ones I knew never questioned me. 3 cousins, an uncle, and my godmother. They came reluctantly, exchanging wary glances. I took my time laying out the contents. Copies of bank statements marked with my transfers. The property record showing the mortgage nearly paid off before the withdrawals began. The printed screenshots from the family chat. This, I said, tapping the first page, is where my money went. And here, flipping to the property file, is the house it bought. This house. Faces shifted, defensiveness melting into something closer to doubt. A voice came from behind me. Am I interrupting? I turned to see Vincent Carter in the doorway, suit crisp despite the humidity, his briefcase in hand. I texted him during the ceremony. Be ready. He stepped forward, shook my hand, then faced Mom, Dad, and Jessica, who had followed him in. You are hereby given notice, he began, his tone sharp enough to steal the room, that legal proceedings will be initiated for the misappropriation of funds belonging to my client. Gasps rippled through the group. Someone muttered, she's serious. Vincent opened his briefcase, withdrew a single envelope, placing it on the table in front of my mother. This outlines the basis for the claim and the remedies we will seek. I suggest you read it carefully. No one reached for it. I gathered the papers I'd displayed, tapped them into a neat stack, looked directly at Jessica. This is the last time you'll ever spend my money without my consent. Her jaw clenched. They thought I'd play checkers, I said, sliding the documents back into the envelope. I've been playing chess. The originals were already secure elsewhere. What I carried now was more than enough for this crowd to know the game had changed. As I turned toward the door, I caught Jessica watching me, her expression stripped of the smug curve she'd worn all afternoon. This wasn't a backyard game anymore. It was a legal match. And I just served first. I walked out into the humid air. Vincent close behind. Voices rose behind us. Some angry, others hushed with worry. In the driveway, he glanced at me. Ready for the next step? I nodded. They can spin their story all they want. The receipts speak louder. By tomorrow morning, those receipts would be in more hands than they could ever control. The sunlight filtering into my apartment felt softer than usual. But my body was still wound tight from yesterday's storm. The adrenaline had drained away, replaced with a strange, deliberate calm. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, expecting silence. Instead, there were several missed calls. A handful of texts from relatives, some defensive, others pretending nothing had happened at the housewarming. I ignored them, went straight to my online banking app. The result wasn't a surprise. My access to the shared family account was gone. They'd slammed the door and bolted it, forgetting I'd already walked out. Instead of feeling panic, I felt lighter. That money had been a leash disguised as family responsibility. Without it, there was no tether. At the kitchen table, I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, reviewing my own accounts. Without the shared account, my income and savings stood cleaner, easier to control. I started a list of every subscription, bill, and small commitment I'd linked to the family network. One by one, I planned how to shift them entirely under my name. I opened my messages, blocked the family group chats, felt the noise drain away from my day in a single tap. By mid-morning, I was ready to speak to the people who'd stood with me. My first call was to Maya. She answered with warmth in her voice. "You don't know how proud I am of you," she said. "Half the office is still talking about how you handled yourself. You didn't lose your temper. You owned the room." "That was the point," I replied. "They wanted a scene. I gave them a statement." Kevin's call was next. His tone was too casual, like nothing had happened. "Rachel, I think everyone just got caught up in the moment yesterday. Neutrality is quiet approval, Kevin," I told him plainly. "If you can't call out what happened, then you're agreeing with it." He went silent. We ended the call on that note. Finally, I rang Vincent. He confirmed the legal paperwork was filed. Told me to expect pushback. "They'll try to bait you," he said. "Don't respond directly. Every word now matters in your favor." "I'm not just stepping away, Vincent," I told him. "I'm stepping into something bigger." The rest of the afternoon was about building the life I actually wanted. I finalized the post-graduation dinner list, inviting only those who had actively supported me. The RSVP confirmations came in quickly. Genuine yes, without a single maybe. After that, I opened a travel site, booked a long weekend trip for next month. It would be my first real vacation in years, and the thought alone made my shoulders ease. In the living room, I unwrapped a new frame I bought on the way home yesterday. My diploma slid inside, the embossed seal catching the light. I hung it in the one spot in my apartment where the morning sun always touched. As I stepped back to admire it, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. The subject line in my email read, "Statement from Jessica." I held the phone in my hand, weighing whether to open it. Could be an apology, though I doubted it. More likely, it was another crafted narrative to pull people back into her corner. Whatever it was, it wouldn't change my decision to live without their approval. But sometimes, knowing the next move is just as powerful as making it. So I opened it. Morning sunlight spread across my kitchen table, touching the edge of my coffee cup. As I opened the email from Jessica, the subject line alone told me this was no apology. Clarification regarding yesterday. The body confirmed it. A carefully crafted message sent to extended family and mutual acquaintances. Casting herself as the misunderstood hostess. Framing my graduation speech as a moment of miscommunication. She claimed I had misinterpreted years of events. Suggested that emotions ran high on what should have been a day of joy. Implied that my accusations came from stress and fatigue after the ceremony. Every paragraph was laced with selective omissions and soft lies. Enough to preserve her image if left unchallenged. I read it twice, highlighting each line where the truth had been bent or erased. In my head, I matched them with the receipts, bank statements, chat screenshots, voice memos that told the real story. This wasn't just spin. This was slander. I opened a blank email. My subject line was simple. "For the record, the truth you weren't told." I attached the full file. The financial transfers. The county property records. The group chat screenshots. Maya's recorded audio of my mother's words. The live stream clip of my public statement. The recipients list wasn't limited to her audience. Every person who had received her clarification would get mine, along with a few key figures in the community who'd taken her side without question. I laid out a concise timeline. Dates. Amounts. Screenshots. Clean and factual. No insults. No emotional detours. Just the truth in chronological order. My finger hovered over the send button, not from hesitation, but from the weight of the moment. Once I clicked, there would be no walking it back. I pressed send. The first reply came within minutes. A neighbor I barely knew. I had no idea. "I'm so sorry." Then more. Apologies. Admissions of ignorance. Messages of support. Maya called, half laughing. "You just dropped a bomb on their PR campaign." "No," I told her. "I just cleaned the record." By mid-afternoon, the fallout was already spreading. Jessica canceled her open house tour. Mom quietly left a community social media group after the comments turned critical. 2 relatives who hadn't spoken to me in months sent private messages, admitting they believed her version until now. I took screenshots, not to gloat, but as proof of how quickly the tide turns when facts replace rumor. Vincent called. The smear attempt only strengthened my legal case, he said. They'll either settle fast or lose harder. His voice carried the calm of someone who'd seen this kind of shift before. That evening, I walked into the private dining room of the Italian restaurant I'd reserved weeks earlier. Every seat was filled, not with blood relatives, but with people who had shown up for me in real ways. Plates clinked. Glasses caught the warm light from the overhead fixtures. Conversations hummed with the comfort of sincerity. My diploma sat on a small side table, framed and angled so the setting sun from the window illuminated its seal. I stood glass in hand. Thank you for being here, I began. Not just tonight, but every time it mattered. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shows up. I looked around the table, letting my gaze rest on each face that had chosen me over convenience. And I'd rather stand alone in truth than sit together in a lie.